Have you ever underestimated someone, dismissed them, perhaps even called them a disgrace, only to discover they held a power, a depth, a worth you could never have imagined? Have you ever judged a book by its cover, only to find the true story lay hidden within the quietest pages? This is the story of Janelle, a woman whose true value was obscured by the shallow glare of comparison, whose quiet strength was mistaken for weakness, and whose profound impact was revealed only in the crucible of crisis. From the unassuming landscapes of Michigan, Janelle emerged not with a roar, but with a whisper that carried the weight of mountains. She was the youngest in her family, a girl who found solace in the intricate logic of code, in the silent hum of computers, a world far removed from the boisterous clamor that defined her older brother, Marcus. Marcus was the family's dazzling comet, a whirlwind of ambition and outward success, always adorned in the latest fashion, his words sharp, his laughter loud, his presence demanding attention. He prided himself on his possessions, his cars, his watches, his sprawling house in a fashionable Detroit suburb. "Look at me, Janelle." He'd often proclaim, his voice thick with a mixture of pride and condescension. "This is what success looks like. You, with your quiet little computer things, living in that cramped apartment, never owning anything substantial, it's a disgrace. You reflect poorly on the family name." Janelle would simply nod, her dark eyes reflecting a flicker of pain, but no resentment. She never argued, never defended herself. She understood Marcus's worldview, narrow and bright as a laser beam, focused solely on the visible, the tangible, the material. She knew her worth was not measured by such metrics, but to him, it was incomprehensible. Her small apartment, her second-hand car, her wardrobe of practical, comfortable clothes, these were to Marcus symbols of failure, of an inability to grasp the real world. He loved the family home, a sturdy, brick-built sanctuary that had housed generations, but even his affection for it was tinged with a materialistic pride, a boastful claim of lineage and inheritance. He saw it as his legacy, his birthright, the very foundation upon which his own ostentatious life was built, not a shared monument to quiet perseverance. Janelle, meanwhile, would visit, her hands often finding the worn, familiar surfaces of the kitchen counter, her gaze lingering on the framed photographs that captured moments of a shared, simpler past. She saw the house not as a status symbol, but as a living heart, a place of belonging, a repository of love and memory, a stark contrast to her brother's superficial assessment. Her connection to it was deep, unspoken, woven into the very fabric of her being, a silent promise to protect its essence, no matter the cost. She carried the weight of his judgment, not as a burden, but as a silent, motivating force, a constant reminder of the unseen battles fought within quiet souls. Janelle's world was a universe away from Marcus's glitz. While he chased fleeting trends and flaunted transient wealth, she immersed herself in the intricate dance of algorithms and the boundless potential of digital innovation. Her nights were spent hunched over a glowing screen, coding, experimenting, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the nascent field of artificial intelligence. Her apartment, humble as it was, became a crucible of creation, filled with the soft hum of servers and the gentle click of keys. She didn't seek recognition or applause. Her motivation sprang from a deep-seated curiosity, a relentless desire to solve problems, to build something truly revolutionary. Her hands, often stained with ink from late-night notes, moved with a delicate precision, translating abstract thought into functional code, each line a testament to her meticulous dedication. She found beauty in the elegant simplicity of a perfectly crafted program, a harmony that Marcus, with his loud pronouncements and flashy acquisitions, could never comprehend. He saw only the dirt under her fingernails, the tired circles under her eyes, never the brilliant constellations forming in her mind. Her journey was one of solitary perseverance, fueled by an unwavering belief in the power of intellect and ingenuity. She devoured technical papers, attended obscure online forums, and participated in hackathons not for the prize money, but for the sheer joy of creation and the intellectual challenge. There was a quiet intensity about her, a focused determination that was often mistaken for shyness or lack of ambition. People, much like Marcus, tended to overlook her, to dismiss her as merely the quiet one, failing to see the formidable mind at work behind her gentle demeanor. But within that quietness resided a profound strength, a resilience forged in the fires of constant underestimation. While Marcus reveled in the transient highs of speculative investments and luxury purchases, often teetering on the edge of financial instability, Janelle was building a foundation of true value, brick by painstaking brick, in the digital ether. She wasn't just coding, she was inventing. She saw needs that others missed, anticipated problems that had yet to materialize, and then, with unwavering focus, she built the solutions. Her work was her sanctuary, a place where her brilliance shone unhindered by external judgment. She wasn't accumulating material possessions, she was accumulating knowledge, experience, and an invaluable intellectual property. Every line of code was an investment, not in fleeting luxuries, but in a future she envisioned, a future where her silent contributions would speak louder than any boastful declaration. The contrast between their lives grew sharper with each passing year, though Marcus remained blissfully ignorant, trapped in his self-constructed illusion of superiority. Convinced that Janelle's unassuming life was proof of his own undeniable triumph. The genesis of Janelle's quiet fortune began with a problem she observed in the burgeoning field of e-commerce. Online transactions were rife with inefficiencies, often bogged down by cumbersome verification processes and security vulnerabilities. Janelle envisioned an AI-driven solution that could streamline these processes, authenticate users with unparalleled speed and accuracy, and create a truly seamless, secure digital marketplace. It was an ambitious undertaking, requiring months of relentless dedication, countless hours of debugging, and moments of profound frustration that would have deterred lesser spirits. But Janelle possessed an unyielding tenacity, a quiet fire that burned bright within her. She worked through weekends, through holidays, fueled by cheap coffee and an unshakable belief in her vision. Her small apartment became a laboratory of innovation, filled with whiteboards scrawled with complex algorithms and the rhythmic tap of her keyboard. Finally, after nearly 2 years of tireless effort, she achieved a breakthrough. Her AI, a revolutionary piece of software that she had meticulously designed, was not only incredibly efficient, but also self-learning, adapting to new threats and evolving user patterns. It was truly groundbreaking. With the guidance of a pro bono lawyer she found through an online tech forum, Janelle filed for a patent. The process was slow, arduous, and filled with legalese she barely understood, but she navigated it with her characteristic quiet determination. Then, one crisp autumn morning, an email arrived that changed everything. The patent had been approved. Janelle felt a quiet surge of triumph, a deep satisfaction that resonated within her very core. She had built something real, something valuable, something that would shape the digital landscape. She licensed her technology to several major tech companies, one by one, watching with a detached fascination as the numbers in her bank account swelled to figures she had once only dreamed of: millions. She was a millionaire, a silent force in the tech world, yet she continued to live with the same understated simplicity. She didn't buy a new car, or a bigger apartment, or designer clothes. Her habits remained unchanged, her routine undisturbed. She continued to code, continued to learn, continued to lay out new problems to solve. Marcus, meanwhile, was experiencing a different kind of financial shift. His investments, fueled by bravado and a touch of recklessness, began to sour. His latest venture, a chain of high-end car washes, was hemorrhaging money faster than he could pour it in. He took out loans, then more loans, using his house, the beloved family home, as collateral. He tried to hide his struggles, maintaining the facade of success, but the cracks were beginning to show. He would complain about temporary liquidity issues, or market corrections, always with an air of superior understanding, even as the stress lines deepened around his eyes. He still occasionally called Janelle, not to inquire about her, but to casually mention his latest deal or to offer unsolicited advice about money management, always ending with a dismissive comment about her modest life. "You know, Janelle," he'd say, his voice laced with the old condescension, "it's easy to save when you don't have anything to lose. You should really think about acquiring some assets." "It's truly a disgrace not to." Janelle would listen, her eyes calm, her expression unreadable, a quiet knowing simmering beneath the surface. She saw the storm gathering, and she held her peace, waiting. The subtle cracks in Marcus's facade rapidly widened into gaping chasms. He began calling family members, not with his usual boastful updates, but with veiled requests for short-term loans to cover unexpected business expenses. His voice, once resonant with self-assurance, now carried an underlying tremor of desperation. He would hint at complex financial maneuvers, using jargon he barely understood, trying to maintain an air of control, but everyone could sense the panic brewing beneath his carefully constructed exterior. He'd arrive at family gatherings looking drawn, his once immaculate suit slightly rumpled, his expensive watch seemingly mocking his increasingly strained smile. The family home, once a point of pride, began to feel like an anchor dragging him down. He had taken out a substantial second mortgage on it, gambling its equity on a venture that was now clearly failing. His creditors were becoming aggressive, their calls more frequent, their threats more explicit. The notices, initially discreet, started arriving in thicker envelopes, bearing ominous red stamps. He would intercept them from the mailbox, his hands trembling slightly, before anyone else could see. Janelle, ever the quiet observer, noticed every detail. She saw the way his eyes darted nervously when the doorbell rang, the sudden silence that would fall over him if a phone buzzed. She heard the snippets of hushed, tense conversations he'd have in the hallway, his voice low, tinged with a fear she hadn't known he possessed. Her heart ached for him, not for his arrogance, but for the raw human fear that now shadowed his every move. She knew he was trapped in a self-made cage, suffocated by the very material aspirations he had once championed. Other family members, seeing his distress, tried to offer help, meager sums they could barely afford, their faces etched with worry for the ancestral home. "Marcus, what's going on?" Aunt Carol would ask, her voice soft with concern. "We heard whispers about the house." Marcus would wave her off with a dismissive hand, attempting to reassert his control, but his conviction wavered. "Just a temporary hiccup, Auntie. Nothing I can't handle. These things are complicated. You wouldn't understand." But his bravado was hollow, a thin veneer over a crumbling reality. He was sinking, and he was dragging the family's most cherished asset down with him. Janelle never offered direct financial aid during this period, nor did she press him for details. She knew Marcus, knew his pride, knew that he would view any unsolicited offer of help from her as an insult, a further testament to his perceived failure. Instead, she continued her silent vigil, watching, listening, gathering information, preparing for the moment when her intervention would be not just helpful, but absolutely necessary, when all other avenues would be exhausted, and the truth of his predicament could no longer be denied. She understood that sometimes the most profound acts of kindness required patience, timing, and a deep understanding of the human heart, even a heart as hardened by pride as Marcus's. The storm was coming, and Janelle, quiet as the dawn, was ready. The inevitable arrived with brutal swiftness. A notice, stark and unyielding, was taped to the front door of the family home. Notice of foreclosure. The bank was initiating proceedings. Marcus found it one morning, his hands shaking as he tore it down, his face drained of all color. He tried to hide it, but the crumpled paper fell from his trembling fingers, landing conspicuously on the pristine hardwood floor. His wife, Sarah, saw it first, her gasp echoing through the silent house. Then, the phone calls started, Not from Marcus, but from distraught family members who had heard rumors, seen the public notices. Aunt Carol called, her voice thick with tears. "Marcus, is it true? The house? Our house?" He tried to deny it, to spin a tale of misunderstandings and legal loopholes, but his voice cracked, betraying the raw panic that consumed him. The facade had completely crumbled. He was cornered, stripped bare of his boasts and his bluster. He called his contacts, his business associates, anyone who might offer a lifeline, but all avenues were closed. His friends vanished, his partners suddenly too busy to take his calls. He was utterly alone, adrift in a sea of his own making, facing the very real prospect of losing the house that symbolized so much, not just for him, but for the entire family. He paced the worn rugs of the living room, a prisoner in his own home, the weight of his failure pressing down on him, suffocating him. He was a man consumed by dread, his once bright eyes now shadowed with despair. The family gathered, somber and anxious, in the very living room that might soon be lost. Voices were hushed, filled with sorrow and quiet recrimination. "How could this happen, Marcus?" Sarah whispered, her face pale. "You promised you had everything under control." He slumped onto the sofa, his shoulders bowed, his head in his hands. He was broken, utterly defeated, the relentless architect of his own downfall. For the first time, he seemed truly humbled, the arrogance burned away by the fires of impending loss. I don't know," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "I tried everything. The market, it just turned. I lost everything. And now the house, it's gone." He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Sweeping across the faces of his family, a desperate plea for understanding, for forgiveness, for an impossible solution. His gaze finally rested on Janelle, who sat quietly in a corner, observing, her expression unreadable. He saw her, truly saw her, for the first time in years, not as a reflection of his own superiority, but as another member of the family sharing in his profound loss. The irony was palpable. In his lowest moment, stripped of all his material possessions, the only thing that mattered was the one thing he couldn't buy, and the person he had called a disgrace. There was a long, agonizing silence, broken only by a quiet sniffle from Aunt Carol. The silence stretched, thick with despair, as the weight of the impending loss settled heavily upon them all, a collective grief for a cherished past slipping away. The silence in the room stretched, heavy with the weight of Marcus's defeat and the family's collective sorrow. Then, Janelle, from her quiet corner, shifted. Every eye in the room, drawn by an almost imperceptible movement, turned towards her. She rose slowly, deliberately, her movements calm and composed, a stark contrast to the chaos that had engulfed Marcus. Her gaze, steady and clear, met Marcus's plan and F. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a quiet resolve. "The house isn't gone, Marcus," she said, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the despair like a beacon. The words hung in the air, incredible, almost unbelievable. Marcus lifted his head, his brow furrowed in confusion, a flicker of something akin to hope, quickly extinguished by his entrenched cynicism. "What are you talking about, Janelle?" He scoffed, a faint echo of his old dismissiveness returning. "You don't understand these things. It's foreclosure. There's nothing left to do." "I've tried everything." He looked around at the other family members, as if seeking their validation for his statement, but they too were watching Janelle. Their expressions a mixture of confusion and cautious optimism. Janelle took a few steps forward, reaching into her simple, worn handbag. She pulled out a sleek black tablet and held it up. On the screen, a single document was displayed, a wire transfer confirmation. The amount was staggering, more money than anyone in that room had ever seen in a single transaction. Underneath it, clearly visible, were the words, "Mortgage account, paid in full." A hush fell over the room, even deeper than before. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Aunt Carol's eyes widened, disbelief warring with dawning realization. Marcus stared at the tablet, then at Janelle, then back at the tablet. His jaw went slack. His eyes, which had been dull with despair moments before, now flickered with utter astonishment, then a growing comprehension, and finally, a profound, unadulterated shock. "What? What is this?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Janelle looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "It's the mortgage, Marcus. It's paid off. The house is safe." She spoke with a quiet authority, a calm certainty that left no room for doubt. The dramatic irony hung heavy in the air. The man who had mocked her for not owning anything was now utterly dependent on the wealth she had quietly amassed, the very wealth he had dismissed as insignificant. The person he had called a disgrace had just saved his legacy, his home, his family's future. Marcus tried to speak again, but no words came out. He was speechless, utterly and completely silenced by the undeniable truth laid bare before him. His carefully constructed world, built on superficiality and external validation, had just been shattered, replaced by a reality he had never dared to imagine. He had always seen Janelle through the distorted lens of his own ego, and now that lens had been violently wrenched away, revealing the true incandescent brilliance he had so carelessly overlooked. The weight of his past words, his callous judgments, now pressed down on him, not from Janelle's hand, but from the crushing force of his own humbled conscience. The silence that followed Janelle's revelation was not one of despair, but of profound shock and a dawning understanding. Marcus, still speechless, crumpled the foreclosure notice in his hand, his eyes fixed on the wire transfer confirmation on Janelle's tablet. He looked up at her, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions, disbelief, humiliation, gratitude, and a dawning, crushing realization of his own foolishness. He had spent years defining wealth by its outward display, never once considering the quiet, profound power of true financial independence and foresight. He, who had always boasted of his acumen, had nearly lost everything, while Janelle, the disgrace, had been building an empire in the shadows. Aunt Carol was the first to break the silence. "Janelle, is this real?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief. Janelle nodded, a soft, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "The bank confirmed it this morning. The process is complete." Sarah rushed to Janelle, embracing her tightly, her body trembling with emotion. "Thank you, Janelle." She sobbed into her shoulder. "Thank you. You saved us. You saved everything." The other family members gathered around, their faces alight with a mixture of wonder and immense gratitude. They hugged her, patted her on the back, their voices a murmur of heartfelt appreciation. Janelle accepted their embraces with quiet grace, her humility unwavering even in this moment of triumph. Marcus, meanwhile, remained rooted to the spot, a statue carved from shame and awe. He watched the family's outpouring of affection for Janelle, the very person he had so casually diminished for years. The warmth and genuine respect radiating from them for Janelle was a stark contrast to the superficial admiration he had always craved and demanded. He finally managed to push himself up, slowly, as if his limbs were heavy with lead. He walked towards Janelle, his gaze fixed on her, no longer with condescension, but with a raw, painful vulnerability. His eyes, usually so sharp and confident, were now clouded with a deep humility he had never before exhibited. He extended a hand, then withdrew it, unsure of how to bridge the chasm his own arrogance had created. "Janelle?" He finally croaked, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." His usual eloquence had abandoned him completely. He tried to meet her gaze, but his eyes kept dropping, unable to hold the weight of her quiet, unwavering presence. He was a man utterly broken, not by financial ruin, but by the profound realization of his own misguided values and the damage they had inflicted. He stood before her, not as the flashy, successful brother, but as a man stripped bare, facing the undeniable truth of his sister's quiet, formidable strength. The weight of his past words, the years of dismissiveness, hung heavy in the air between them, an unspoken apology already forming in his humbled heart. The days that followed were a testament to the slow, often painful process of true transformation. Marcus, stripped of his bravado, moved through the house like a ghost, his shoulders still slumped, his usual bluster replaced by a profound quietness. He tried to approach Janelle, to articulate the seismic shift that had occurred within him, but the words seemed inadequate, clumsy. Janelle, he began one evening, finding her in the kitchen, meticulously cleaning up after dinner. I've been thinking. He paused, searching for the right words. All these years, I thought. I thought success was about what you owned, what you showed the world. I thought you were a disgrace. I called you that, didn't I? His voice was barely a whisper, filled with a raw self-condemnation. Janelle stopped wiping the counter, turning to face him. Her expression was gentle, inviting him to continue. I was wrong, Janelle. So profoundly wrong, he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. I was so blinded by my own ego, by this need to impress, that I couldn't see what was truly valuable. I couldn't see you. He looked at her, his eyes now open, truly seeing her for the first time. You had everything I pretended to have. You built something real, something meaningful, with quiet dedication, without ever needing applause. You are the strongest person I know. Tears welled in his eyes, not of self-pity, but of genuine remorse and newfound understanding. It was an apology more profound than any grand declaration, born from a place of deep, humbled realization. Janelle simply nodded, her eyes soft. She didn't need him to grovel, didn't need him to suffer. Her triumph was in his understanding, in the quiet revolution of his heart. It's all right, Marcus, she said, her voice a balm. We all learn in our own time. Her forgiveness was immediate, unconditional, a reflection of her inherent grace. The rest of the family, witnessing Marcus's transformation, responded with compassion. They saw his genuine remorse, his struggle to shed the skin of his old self. The once strained atmosphere in the family home began to ease, replaced by a newfound tenderness, a deeper appreciation for one another. Janelle, though still quiet, was no longer invisible. Her presence radiated a quiet authority, an unspoken wisdom. Family members sought her advice, not just on financial matters, but on life, on values, on what truly mattered. Her opinions, once overlooked, were now sought out, respected, cherished. Marcus began to spend more time at the family home, helping with repairs, tending to the garden, performing small, selfless acts that spoke louder than any of his previous boasts. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply trying to be present, to atone, to connect. He started reading about technology, trying to understand the world Janelle inhabited, asking her questions, genuinely curious. The brother who had once scorned her quiet pursuits was now actively seeking to learn from her, to understand the very foundations of her strength. The process was slow, but it was real. Marcus was embarking on a journey of self-discovery, guided by the very person he had once dismissed, a journey that would redefine not only his relationship with Janelle, but also his very understanding of himself. With the family home secured, and Marcus slowly, painstakingly, rebuilding himself, a new era dawned for the family. The air in the house, once heavy with unspoken resentments and anxieties, now hummed with a quiet, revitalized warmth. Marcus, humbled by his near loss and profoundly changed by Janelle's grace, became her most unexpected advocate. He no longer spoke of wealth in terms of flashy cars or designer brands. His conversations shifted to the power of quiet innovation, the strength found in resilience, and the true meaning of humility. He even began to tell their story, cautiously at first, then with growing conviction, to his old circle of acquaintances, challenging their superficial perspectives. I thought I had it all figured out. He'd admit, his voice devoid of its former arrogance. But my sister, Janelle, the one I called a disgrace for not owning anything, she showed me what true wealth is. It's not about what you display, it's about what you build, what you protect, what you value from within. His newfound humility was infectious, slowly chipping away at the lingering cynicism among those who knew him. He championed Janelle's work, encouraged his children to embrace their passions regardless of perceived status, and became a quiet pillar of support for his family. Janelle, for her part, continued her work, her quiet life largely unchanged, but now infused with a deeper sense of peace and belonging. The burden of being underestimated had lifted, replaced by the quiet dignity of being truly seen, truly valued. She never flaunted her wealth, choosing instead to invest it wisely, to support causes she believed in, and to ensure the long-term security of her family and the beloved ancestral home. The house itself stood as a silent monument to their story, its walls now holding not just generations of memories, but also the echoes of a profound lesson learned. It was no longer just a building, it was a symbol of resilience, of redemption, and of the enduring power of unconditional love. The family gathered there often, laughter ringing through the rooms, a sound fuller and more genuine than before. They played board games, cooked together, shared stories, their bonds strengthened by the crucible they had passed through. Marcus, sometimes, would simply sit and watch Janelle, a soft, grateful smile on his face. He saw her, truly saw her, not as the quiet one or the disgrace, but as the hidden gem, the quiet virtuoso who had saved them all, the unassuming architect of their renewed unity. He had discovered that the greatest treasures are often found not in the loudest displays, but in the deepest, most unassuming corners of the heart. Janelle's life was a testament to the fact that true power doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It simply is, ready to rise when its moment arrives, quiet and unstoppable. So, what have we learned from Janelle's story, a modern fable woven into the fabric of everyday life? We've learned that true worth is rarely loud. It often resides in the quiet, in the unassuming, in the depths that others are too quick to overlook. It's a powerful reminder that the person you might dismiss, the one who doesn't fit neatly into your predefined boxes of success, might be the very individual holding the keys to untold potential, to an inner world of profound strength and genius. We saw how judgment, fueled by superficiality and ego, can blind us to the incandescent light of another's soul. Marcus, in his relentless pursuit of outward validation, nearly lost everything, including the very essence of his family, because he couldn't see beyond the surface. He learned, in the most painful way possible, that the disgrace was not Janelle's quiet existence, but his own narrow perception. Her story is a resounding affirmation that real wealth is not measured in possessions, but in perseverance, in integrity, in the quiet cultivation of extraordinary talent. It's about building something of lasting value, not for applause, but for the inherent joy of creation and the profound impact it can have. And finally, it's a testament to the transformative power of humility and genuine recognition. When Marcus finally opened his eyes, when he allowed his pride to crumble, he didn't just save his home, he saved himself, gaining a perspective infinitely more valuable than any fortune. He learned that the greatest lessons often come from those we least expect, from the silent heroes who walk among us, their brilliance often veiled by humility. So, I challenge you, look around you today. Who are you overlooking? Who are you judging based on outward appearances? Take a moment to truly see the quiet ones, the unassuming ones, for their stories, their talents, their inherent worth might just surprise you. They might even change your world. Share this story. Comment below. Remind someone today that the deepest treasures are often found in the quietest hearts, and that true strength often whispers long before it roars.